So this story involves a Pathfinder First Edition campaign that I was a player in a few years ago. My group was trying to get to the top of a mountain to fight a phoenix, and the only way to the top of the mountain was through this temple. As we enter the temple, a female fire elemental being of some kind appears, and asks us for a reason for being there. My character answers her, and the best excuse I could come up with on the spot is we're mountain inspectors. Pretty dumb, I know, but it was the first thing I could think of, so our game master has me roll a bluff check. Natural 20. Now, of course, a natural 20 on a skill check doesn't guarantee success, so the GM openly rolls for the opposing sense motive. Natural 1. At this point, I'm celebrating, thinking that I've just succeeded in tricking the fire elemental and that the party is going to get through this temple without a fight. At least that's what I think, until the fire elemental just attacks us anyway. In hindsight, the fire elemental's sense motive bonus must have been so high that no matter what I rolled, I wouldn't have been able to beat it with my admittedly lackluster bonus to bluff. It likely didn't help that my lie wasn't the most believable. Even still, it stings to have the dice roll in your favor only for the GM to determine that, regardless of what you rolled, you lose the skill check. I mean, it's not the worst horror story out there, but it still kind of bums me out thinking about it. I just had a session where players were pulling some serious miracle rolls, and as a game master, I was thrilled right alongside them. I think it's important to let them have those W's, especially since you, as the game master, are the person who called for the roll in the first place. Now, this story didn't really get to become a full-fledged horror novel, but it has all the makings of one, had I let it evolve. Instead, I cut it short, so we're left with an RPG horror short story of sorts. Let's start with the obligatory disclaimers. This is my first time writing here, and I'm not familiar with the format, so apologies in advance for any errors. Also, English is not my first language. I've been running a D&D 5th edition Ghost of Saltmarsh campaign for a group of my friends for about 3 years now. Scheduling conflicts and the virus destroyed our ability to meet up for a while, and playing online was not an option. The one time that we did try it, it was a poor imitation of the fun that we had playing in person. Thankfully, both work schedules and the pandemic are much better now, and we play once a month. Yes, this is as good as it gets between adult lives and 2 jobs. It was my first time DMing, and we got off to a bit of a rocky start with me being extremely nervous, double-checking everything and constantly backtracking. At first, most of my friends/players were also newbies, so they were slow to get started with role-playing until they learned the ropes. The bright side of that, for me, was that they were so inexperienced that thankfully they didn't realize how crappy I was back then. Together, though, we found a way for everyone involved to have fun and be engaged as much as possible, but I digress. A few months ago, my husband, who also plays in this group, decided he wants to make some dice boxes for the rest of the players. I do a bit of wood burning, so we decided to create a logo about the group and decorate the boxes with that. I also have a colleague who is a massively talented artist, so I thought, who better? I commissioned the artist, I gave her a few pointers on theme. This is important for the rest of the story. I just told her the campaign takes place at a seaside town and the surrounding areas, so nautical theme for the logo. She makes the logo, sends it over. I love it. The dice boxes are made, players receive them for Christmas, everyone loves them, we keep playing D&D, and we keep enjoying ourselves. Now for the horror story part. I'm sitting at my desk at work a couple of days ago, poring over my Excel sheets, and there's a knock at the door. It's my colleague who made the logo. I haven't seen the artist in a while since she works from home most of the time. She's just there to pick up some stuff, and she's brought her boyfriend to meet me. Cue the boyfriend. Hi, I'm John. I've been wanting to come to this place for so long and meet you and learn about this mystery campaign and artist's work that I've been hearing so much about. Not inviting myself to your game or anything, but here's a character I made. He's a large genasi with a sailor background. I have a backstory and everything, and it's right here on my phone. Here, read it. At this point, I'm so stunned that I can't think straight. I was very focused on my work when they walked in, and the interaction with artists was just under 10 seconds before this monologue. So after what can only be described as whiplash, I just say, I'd love to read it. He hands me his phone, and I skim through the text. I must have been, I want to say, in shock, even though it's so overdramatic. Then again, how else do you explain the fact that I remember nothing, not even a class from this backstory, that I was coerced into reading while being watched? After a few silent, awkward seconds of me scrolling and skimming, I say the character looks really interesting and the sailor background would really tie in with Saltmarsh, but did you like the character? You know I'm an actor and voice actor, so that would really help me roleplay my character. Most of my players are shy role players, and it's taken a while for us to get here, with a lot of respect and effort from everyone at the table, consciously allowing others to take the spotlight and actively putting in the effort to roleplay. Now, this guy's energy, it's the complete opposite to what our game is. I've read enough RPG horror stories to be extremely wary of who I play with, for many reasons, one of which being that the dynamic of this group is precious, and I wish to protect it at all costs. I politely say that this group is not made up of co-workers, as he initially seemed to believe, but a group of close friends. We are not looking for more players, since we already have 6 people at the table, but I might run a one-shot adventure for colleagues, to which both he and Artist would be more than welcome, and I'd be willing to play if he runs any games. I don't remember much else from the rest of the interaction, but I do remember a lot of awkwardness and nervousness. Myself not being a social flower either, I was doing my very best to not make them realize how much I was taken aback or make either of them feel unwelcome. Even though the guy came on really strong for a first meeting, I'm guessing it's because he's younger, mid-20s, and excited to find a group. I meant what I said about playing together, but I would not invite him to the existing campaign. Not that I would need to, as he seems to have skipped that part entirely. TLDR, guy learns from his girlfriend that some random people play D&D, makes a character sheet, writes a 2-page backstory, has girlfriend introduce him to the Dungeon Master, makes Dungeon Master read the backstory in front of him, tries to insert himself into the game. Now, I understand that this is not the worst horror story ever, hence why it's probably the first one in the video, but look, this is very awkward. I know it's awkward because I've been in this situation. I have been in a situation where people will pitch to me why they should join my D&D game on first meeting. I have no idea who they are. I don't even know their name. One guy did it in an elevator while I was listening to a jazz set, so I couldn't even hear what he was saying. I had to turn off the music. It was so awkward. It was so incredibly awkward. Is that the worst thing ever? No. Is it going to make me want to allow you into my campaign? Also, no. You need to at least build some rapport with somebody before asking to join their D&D game. The awkwardness is only exasperated by the fact that this guy seems to have genuinely worked really hard to create a character, which is respectable. However, the effort is misplaced. Doing this to a person that you don't know at all is just going to come off as, like the OP said, a tad too much, and is not going to be doing you any favors in terms of finding a new group to play with. If you're okay with playing with strangers, LFGs or local game stores are probably your better option. Walking up to a random person just because you know they're running a game, well, your success rate's going to be fairly low. So, at one point, I would have called this player the star player of the team. They drove the roleplay, pushing the rest of the new players to become more confident, and had a good grasp of the rules and what it took to make a great game. Throughout the last couple of campaigns, however, things slowly began to degrade. It started with lots of questions surrounding homebrewing aspects of the game, primarily things that would vastly improve the strength of his character. I tried to be accommodating and within reason, but had to tell him no due to a lot of reasons ranging from power and balance to character concepts that stretch beyond reason and sensibility. He will always introduce these things with, "It's totally cool if you say no," only to get pissed when I actually say no or suggest a version of it I am more comfortable allowing. The consequence for me, and I see this happening to other GMs running games for him as well, are characters based on the most broken builds the game more plainly allows. There is a lot less of a roleplay sensibility applied to how different character abilities are acted upon or applied, and much more of a "I'm metagaming to beat the DM and his game" going on. He's also increasingly seeking to be the center of attention, despite doing very little to make the character earn that place in the story. More time gets spent on developing the character between sessions than during them, resulting in constant background retcons or quirk of the week situations that the rest of the players are getting tired of humoring.
As Vex is saying this, Tiberius is getting a half chip.
Yeah, the parallels the title alluded to are quickly becoming visible. He will often muscle in when someone else has a cool moment to claim a piece of it by helping out, but only doing so after the fact, or trying to pull the exact same trick on their turn in a vain attempt to steal some of another character's thunder. If some other characters with a different class gets or does something cool, he wrings his brain to find ways he can also get a cool thing, or suggest ways his abilities achieve things that they are not supposed to do, so that they can be as good or outshine the other party member/class. Again, I have to say no a lot. Getting back to the power gaming thing, he now tries to spring a coffee lock on me. 9 levels in, and he finally has a sorcerer warlock with greater restoration, unlimited spell slots without any drawbacks await. When I tell him there is no way I'm letting him exploit chaining together however many short rests he wants to generate functionally endless spell slots, well, he exploded. I had utterly ruined all the fun and all the hard effort that went into this character. Now, to the point I made in the title a few years back, the group had to cut a player who was disruptive and a bad fit. Myself and him would have these long discussions about this player, and he would tell me a lot about this character Tiberius from Critical Role, and how it mirrored the problem that this other player posed at the time. I don't watch Critical Role. He, on the other hand, is a massive fan. As such, it has been both sad and frankly strange seeing him slowly become the thing he so passionately talked about and warned me about back then. Yeah, while I was reading this story, I was immediately reminded of Tiberius from Critical Role and the problems that he possessed during the first season of that show. And yeah, this story does show some problems, to say the least. The main thing here is power gaming, which I don't think Tiberius was fully known for. I'm pretty sure he had more problems with metagaming, but we'll move on. Let's talk about power gaming. I don't think power gaming is a problem in every D&D game, but for many games, yes, it can prove to be an obstacle. Now, I have said in the past that power gaming can be a problem that is easy to solve because a lot of power gamers are experienced players and will understand where the DM is coming from if they need to balance out the game and the party. However, this power gamer is power gaming out of revenge against the DM and using that to take the spotlight. Often power gaming can do this unintentionally, especially in combat, but here, this guy's just doing it all the time because that's what he wants, which, yes, a serious problem to say the least. This isn't an unintentional side effect of a really cool broken build. This is a side effect of this dude being not the greatest player in general. Our dungeon master at the time wanted to introduce Dungeons & Dragons to a co-worker of theirs and asked myself and another friend if we would like to play. We both agreed and were excited that this time we wouldn't be playing in a 9 to 10 person yelling fest. We all started at level 1 and I rolled up a human male warlock, co-worker rolled up a female tiefling wizard, and my buddy ran a homebrew half troll / orc barbarian named Rawl, the one that would just absolutely be harassed by that tiefling wizard. Rawl speaks in a deep, gravelly Cockney accent, a half-troll, half-orc that took the features of a regular orc. He sort of looks like Grop from Harry Potter. He purposely has very low intelligence, but a lot of strength and charisma. He never intentionally hurt a fly. He's just looking for his mom, and just so happens to spot a small group of people that acknowledge his presence. That's so cute. He must be protected at all costs. My character was taking a job that led him to a swamp town where it ultimately led nowhere. Absolutely hating this breadcrumb trail, he decided to look for the nearest notice board to find anything that could lend him some cash. The wizard didn't really have a backstory, as when the character was finally rolled up, we had already started, and they were okay with this. Looking at the notice board had me and the wizard spot the only job posted, to search for someone important that went missing. Rawl, shortly after us ripping the post off the board, moseyed over introducing himself with, "Hi, I'm Rawl, what's your name?" I kinda glanced over at the big guy and stated my name, going back to read the job notice. The wizard ignored him entirely. Rawl reattempted to make pleasantries with the wizard, only getting a couple words in, and then was ignored. Again, we slowly make our way over to whoever posted the job while myself and Rawl converse more, mostly him telling stories with a show of flailing arms and sound effects for immersion. When we arrived at the mansion, the DM made it clear that Rawl was way too heavy for the infrastructure of this town. This will be important later. Sadly staying outside, which eventually led to the first floor because he was lonely. The wizard and I went up to discuss payment and gather more information. The person in question was in possession of something the client needed in order to help the town, but lost connection with him before it could make it into their hands. Our job wasn't to locate him, but go to his home to see if his item was still there. The pay seemed nice, so we let the client know of our group size, and we were off. Along the way, the wizard would not interact much with Rawl, only speaking with him through me. This wasn't out of shyness, it was just because Rawl was a little bit more on the slow side and was much more attached to me than her, which apparently she liked. Making some underhanded comments on Rawl's intelligence, we rested at night where the wizard casted Find Familiar and conjured up a fox. Also important, Rawl and I continued to talk. At this point, we're talking about our combat tactics. And on the way back, Rawl was bitten by the fox familiar, and Rawl kicked it away. The DM made him roll. Natural 20. The roll was for how far it would go due to Rawl's size and strength. It poofed away immediately upon taking damage, but the DM thought it'd be funnier for it to take the fall damage instead, and described the fox went zooming off into the distance, Team Rocket style, and told the wizard that it landed back at town, where it then poofed out of existence. The wizard obviously was upset that this happened, but didn't argue since she did order the fox to do that. We made it back to town and proceeded to go and grab the money. With Rawl in tow, I tell him to stay downstairs and not to be sad as he patiently waited. We handed over the object and they handed over the payment, no questions asked. I didn't really mind the lack of interrogation, but what I did mind was that there were 3 little pouches of money handed out. One made it to my hands, and the other the other 2 were stuffed into the wizard's pockets. I walk over to the staircase and block the way out of the room and ask if I can take Rawl's share. I don't really trust the money with them. They play dumb and pretend that there was only 2 shares in total. I asked the DM if I noticed the yoinking of my friend's money, and I rolled high. I asked one more time for the fair share of money or else. Now, the DM doesn't really plan out anything, which is fine, but this means he was okay with basically anything taking place, including PvP. The wizard's response is what started said PvP. Rawl's dumb anyway, what's he gonna do with the money? He won't even know he earned any. I cast color spray and hit the wizard. I run up and steal the money back and push the wizard to the ground just for safe measure. The client is speechless as to what is going on and just watches from their desk, mouth agape. I turn around and run calling for Rawl, who happily runs over and starts going up the stairs, creaking loudly with the building threatening to cave at any moment. The wizard recovers and hits me with color spray, still lying on the floor. We're both level 1 spellcasters. It hits and I fall to the ground blind, trying to rush down some more stairs. Rawl falls through the stairs about halfway up, just about to where I fell and rolled too. My turn comes back and I wriggle my way into the hole and land in Rawl's big muscly arms and yell for him to get us the hell out of here. And he obliges, Hulk jumping out of the hole and through the walls. The wizard angrily lags behind with a huge commotion in tow. I gave Rawl his share of the money, and yes, he didn't want the money. I just thought it was unfair and mean to take someone else's fair share of money when he also put in the work to help find the item in question. The session ended shortly after that, and I expressed that I had no hard feelings, at least on my part. Though Rawl was a little sad I was the only one that was nice to him. We later had another session where another coworker was brought in. They rolled up a skeleton bard named Skellebones, and they played their ribcage like a xylophone, even had an instrument app to play when they cast spells. The game itself, well, it didn't last much longer, and Rawl went off on his own to continue his search for his mom. I don't do this very often, but I do really like the character concept for Rawl, and I hope that somebody watching this video takes this character and helps him to find his mother in their own game. But anyway, wholesome stuff out of the way, let's talk about the horror here. And yeah, it's not as horrible as many of the other stories. There's no downright villain in this story. This is just character conflict that wasn't communicated very well. Clearly, the Tiefling Wizard wants some sort of conflict with Rawl. Why does she want this? We don't know, but the problem is that she wasn't communicating with the players about this. Just like romantic relationships, I think character rivalries also need to be consensual, especially if they're openly hostile. And unfortunately, the Tiefling did not communicate that, resulting in the PvP that we see here. PvP and character rivalries are just fine. In fact, in my own game, I actually have a character who's very similar to the wizard and a character that's kind of similar to Rawl, a super intelligent smartass and a kind of dopey pirate captain. They have a healthy rivalry, and it's really fun in my game. However, the 2 players that are playing those characters plainly understand that this is in-game conflict and consented to have this be a part of their character relationship. Our Tiefling Wizard here did not do that, and the awkwardness that sprouted from this PvP probably caused the spontaneous combustion of this game, which is just, well, it's always unfortunate to see that. Just as a forewarning, there isn't a whole lot of D&D in this D&D horror story. This is less about the game we played and more about the people we played with. So I'm a massive fan of tabletop role-playing games, but it has been an awfully long time since I've managed to find a group to play with, especially one that I gelled with enough to play with for more than a few sessions. Late last year, someone new joined my girlfriend's workplace, someone who we would learn shared a lot of nerdy interests. We'll call this person Kai. Kai mentioned her husband, who we will call Lyle, was an experienced dungeon master, and due to a falling out with their last group, they didn't have anyone to currently play with. A party formed shortly after, consisting of another couple and a mutual friend. At first, the experience was okay. I'd be lying if I said Lyle wasn't an entertaining DM. We were definitely having a lot of fun to start with. However, Looking back on the whole experience, there are some things that were red flags. To list a few, Kai and Lyle mentioned that their favorite races to play were always small races like goblins, gnomes, and in the case of FF14, Lalafels. There is nothing intrinsically wrong with that, but my girlfriend mentioned that I like to play small races too, but didn't pick a Lalafell character because they were too uncanny/creepy looking. Kai got visibly upset at my girlfriend's remark and was short with her for the rest of the day at work. My girlfriend just shrugged it off and assumed Kai was just having like a bad day. Kai was also obsessed with Luis, a 9-year-old character from Bob's Burgers. Whenever she had the chance, she would talk about how much in common they were, even dressing up as her for Halloween, getting a tattoo of her silhouette, and making her Final Fantasy XIV character look like her too. She was also vehemently anti-children. I'm sure a lot of you know the sort, the kind of child-free person who will take any possible opportunity to talk about how awful kids are, who will insult people with children, call them breeders and the like. Don't get me wrong, my girlfriend and I aren't planning to have kids either, but not because we hate them. It's just incredibly expensive to take care of children in the US. The best example of her attitude towards kids is this. We attended a hockey game together, not really my thing, but a free night out is a free night out, and after the game, as we were walking back to our cars, Kai and Lyle loudly started joking about how much they hated children in a massive crowd of hundreds of people all making their way out of the building, next to a lot of children. It was a bit mortifying. Kai and Lyle weren't particularly affectionate with each other either. Kai would often look over Lyle's shoulder while he was looking up the stats on monsters or rereading his notes, and we can tell that he didn't feel comfortable telling her, either due to cowardliness or fear, to stop and mind her own business. She wouldn't even let him use a DM screen for this reason. Kai would get visibly upset with him if he didn't give her the item she wanted, nerf a monster enough, give her enough opportunities to show off, or let her get the finishing kill. The best example of this is when fighting a Hydra, Kai convinced Lyle to have us start with 1 head, despite him wanting us to start with 3, and the rest of us knowing that would be completely trivializing to the encounter. Anytime that Lyle would stand up to Kai, she would quickly inch herself away from him, act incredibly cold towards him for the rest of the session, or even go as far as to attempt to flirt with other male players in the group. The only time Kai ever showed affection, or rather love-bombing, towards Lyle was when he was talking to other women. Kai is incredibly insecure around other women, priding herself on being one of the few women in her Final Fantasy XIV guild, often talking about how her male guildmates hit on her all the time, and talk about how much they want to sleep with her. In the same breath, she would be incredibly harsh towards her guildmaster for posting selfies of herself for no reason. She would often critique my girlfriend for being stereotypically feminine, only to big up herself in the same sentence for not wearing makeup and playing video games. If you can't tell by now, Kai suffers from the other girls versus me syndrome. Kai and Lyle were dismissive about other DMs and sessions they've been involved with in the past. Nobody was a good enough DM, and I assumed that was because nobody else, aside from her husband, would placate her obnoxious behavior and bend to her will. A moment that stands out is when Kai attempted to get a magic book for her sorcerer, but badly failed the Arcana roll. Despite my character having absolutely no points in Arcana, I went to try the roll to help her out, and I rolled a nat 20, which for my rogue is pretty funny. We were joking and laughing about my idiot rogue with no knowledge of magic somehow deciphering this ancient magical text, but Kai, she didn't find it funny at all. She was visibly upset her character failed and mine succeeded, despite me only having done it to help her out. Lyle had to place a hand on her leg and told her, "Don't feel bad." He then proceeded to read off a long list of powerful spells that she could learn from the book, things one would not normally be able to obtain or use until the late game. We were level 4 at the time. I assumed that Kai was incredibly controlling, perhaps even abusive. Lyle didn't have any social media profiles, including a Reddit account, a Discord account, or even a smartphone. He mostly relied on an old flip phone and didn't give out his number to people he considered friends. Lyle even mentioned quitting Final Fantasy XIV a few years ago. This struck me as odd because he majored in computer science and was, for lack of a better word, a huge nerd. Why wouldn't he have any of these stereotypical nerdy things? Surely his wife must be controlling and manipulating him. Was he? All in all, this led to us feeling very alienated from the group, and our attitude was beginning to show. In our final session, we bowed out saying goodbye because it had been a particularly awkward session with Kai chatting up one of Lyle's friends the entire game. We had planned to type out a message saying thank you for all the fun, but things weren't a good fit for us, stuff like that. Before we had a chance though, my girlfriend received a massive, angry, and ranty message about how disrespectful we were constantly to Lyle, that she would not tolerate anyone being rude to her husband, despite the fact that she was constantly being rude to her husband herself. The whole thing just felt wrong. So I did something I haven't done in a long time and went Googling to learn more about them because something about their whole relationship just did not sit right with us. Kai was pretty clean with no real social media to speak of, but Lyle, the first result for him was for this registry in our state, and a photo of Lyle from a few months ago, around the time when the campaign first started. Not only that, but I found the governmental seizures from the time of his arrest, which include 2 computers and an external hard drive. I am not kidding. I felt time slow down around me. I felt intense fear and dissociation. My mind went completely blank. My girlfriend said that I uttered, babe, to get her attention. I had genuine guttural fear and panic in my voice, a tone she had never heard from me before. So it turns out that in 2016, Lyle was convicted of having on his computer. He now has to go to the local sheriff's department every year to get his photo and profile updated on the state sex offender registry, and likely spent at least 2 years in prison for it. Everything made sense. The reason why he wasn't on social media, his lack of online presence, their rocky and unloving relationship, why they were obsessed with small fantasy races and cartoon children, everything. Even though this occurred 2 or 3 months ago, I'm still honestly shaken up by it all. We had Kai and Lyle over for dinner multiple times. We had these people in our home and considered them friends. We're still attempting to comprehend our feelings surrounding all of this. We should have searched their names sooner. A few months ago when this all went down, my girlfriend texted the majority of her previous coworkers, especially those with kids or grandkids, in case Lyle accompanies Kai to any staff parties with their children present. I've contacted the comic book / game and hobby stores Lyle volunteers at just due to the proximity he has with kids. We obviously told the other party members of our findings, but we don't know whatever happened to that campaign. Unlike her husband, Kai does have multiple Reddit accounts and frequents this subreddit. I'm expecting either myself or my girlfriend to get some retaliation from this, but hopefully this is the last we will ever hear from them. TLDR, we got into a D&D game with a very standoffish and uncomfortable couple. We were eventually removed from the game, and upon Googling them, discovered that our DM was arrested for possession of 5 years ago and is still on probation. And you thought Not Like Other Girls was going to be the worst thing in this post. Holy crap. As someone who has had to do frequent background checks on my work outside of YouTube, I can say with confidence that you would be shocked what you could find with a simple Google search. Now, I'm not saying you to background check every single party member you ever play with. However, I am saying that if you are concerned about something at your table, if you see some serious warning signs, a quick Google can't hurt. It's 10 seconds of time that can save you a lot of hurt later on. I think D&D's general stereotypical representation as the antisocial nerd game has damaged the game to a degree because it's easy to forget that this is a social game. We're playing with other human beings, other people, and that means that you need to deal with people problems. Sometimes you're going to need to deal with people that just straight up aren't the best, or people who make you feel unsafe or uncomfortable at the table. When these sort of situations pop up, a lot of us can become the proverbial deer in the headlights. However, when you see warning signs, like I said earlier, you should consider them. Don't ignore your gut. If you feel uncomfortable, talk about it with your partner, with your group, with your DM. Don't just let it lay, because you might be stuck with somebody you're not comfortable with for way longer than is necessary. Alright, and that is going to be it for today's episode of RPG Horror Stories. If you guys enjoyed it, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more of my content, then you can check out Shadow Over Caraconos, my actual play D&D podcast. And while you're there in the cards, subscribe to Crispy's Tavern to get more of our content right as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go down into the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment, "It got worse," to let me know you made it to the end of the video. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.